Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Holly Hanley, of course, and we're going to be doing the Life is a Beautiful Ride. Okay, so I had a lot of fun painting this one. I love painting flowers, and I'm such a big fan of contrast, and I'm using all the Decor Americana paints. I find that they're really nice and vibrant, colorful, and I always tell people in my classes, feel free to get creative. So if you want to change any colors, definitely go ahead. I can help you with that too. So if there's a favorite flower color that you want to use, or I'm not sure if anybody changed the color of the bike today, but I thought that would be kind of a fun, if you painted it pink, or you could do purple. I chose teal because that's one of my favorite colors. So that's what I went with, which is the mermaid tail. So if you did change the color of the bike, we're actually going to be going with that first. So whatever you used, if you use the mermaid tail, you want to get a little bit of that out. And we're also going to be using a little bit of white. So we're just going to basically tint the color, and we're going to do some highlighting. So what I usually do is when I paint these pieces, I base coat them with black. Okay, and then I use that to my advantage. So I actually use that to create a little bit of separation in between the sections. So you can see I left a little bit of space showing in between there. Okay, and that just, again, helps with the shading, I think. And a lot of times what I do is I base coat with the shadow color, and then I actually add just highlights. So, and this is the brush that we're going to be using. I love to dry brush. It's like totally my thing. I absolutely have so much fun with it. Okay, but I use, it's called a lunar blender. So if you haven't used this before, and if you painted with me before, bear with me for a few minutes. Okay, but let's see here. Okay. So what it is it's basically sort of like a filbert brush. Okay, so it's got the same sort of rounded tip as a filbert, but with the soft hair, it actually has a bristle hair mixed in. So it has a really nice, spring to it. Okay, so when I use that for dry brushing, and when I say dry brushing, it's more like a Holly Hanley sort of dry brush. It's kind of like a wet dry brush. So what I do is I wet the brush first, and then I tap off all the excess water, and then I'll show you. I'll go through exactly how I do that. Okay, so bear with me for just a minute here. I'm going to turn the camera around and we'll get started. So if you want to get out, again, the mermaid tail and a little bit of white, those are the colors that we're going to be using first. Okay, or if you change the color of your bike, just you can get out the base color and a little bit of white. So here we go. Here's our picture. I just base coated just with that mermaid tail. Again, that's a new color from DecoArt, or fairly new. I love it. So pretty. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're actually going to dry brush some highlights on top. Okay, and don't worry if you haven't done this before. It's actually such a fun technique. I really don't do a lot of shading on my pieces anymore. I mostly just base coat with the shadow color and then add some highlights on top. So I really bring them out. All right, so here we go. So I'm just going to be using, you can use the 3/8 or actually even the 1/4 inch lunar blender. Okay, if you have it, that would be great. You can get that out. And let me just see where my lunar blender ended up here. Okay. Sorry, I had to grab a brush. So I've got my lunar blender again. I don't know if I mentioned before, but if you have a question, please unmute yourself and just ask. I'm happy to help you out and ask or answer any questions. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to dry brush the highlights on. Okay, so I'm just using a little bit of that mermaid tail and some white. Okay, like so. Okay, right in here. So I've got those two colors. And again, like I said before, it's not your typical dry brush. It's actually more of like a wet dry brush, which I know doesn't really make a lot of sense, but what I do is I wet the brush first, and that just softens up the bristles just a little bit. Okay, and I'm gonna take that mermaid tail and I'm gonna add a little bit of white. Okay, so this is the first highlight. And I always say, you know, your pieces, they go through those stages where they don't look quite so pretty, but it'll get better and better. Okay, so we're going to start with sort of a darker shade. Don't add too much white, and then we're going to get brighter and brighter. Okay, so again, you can see that I tapped off my brush again, just because on your brushes, the hairs on your brush go right up underneath the ferrule, which is the metal part of the brush. Okay, so there's actually quite a few hairs that you don't see, and that basically works like a reservoir. So it sucks that water up there, and when you lift up your brush like this or hold it straight up and down, okay, sometimes that water rolls down. So I always tap it off a couple times on my paper towel just to get rid of the excess. Okay, so taking that little touch of white, you're going to blend back and forth on your palette just to get rid of the excess paint and evenly distribute that on your brush. And we're going to start with adding those highlights. Okay, so there's a nice bright highlight right on here on that bike frame. On the back, okay, we've got a nice highlight starting right here. And that's going to help separate that section from the back. Okay, so it looks like that frame is sort of meant to. Okay, so right in here, again, I'm just going to sweep back and forth like this. So you can use your 1/4 inch, or if you have a 3/8, that'll work great. Okay, so I always rest my hand as much as I can. Okay, I hold my brush right on the ferrule, so I have lots of control, and I'm just going to sweep back and forth like this. Okay, so right in here, we're going to add a nice highlight, and if you get a little bit of a blotch, don't worry. Okay, there's always ways to fix that. Okay, and then, so I'm sweeping up and down like this for this section as well as this one. Okay, and you can hear my paint is actually like skipping over the canvas. Okay, like this. And then I'm going to turn my brush going horizontally this way. Okay, so just on this little section right here. Okay, so just brushing back and forth, like so. Okay, so you can see I added quite a bit of color there. I don't know if that's showing up. Okay, and then I'm going to continue here, but basically just sort of sweeping back and forth. And a lot of times I call it sort of like a pendulum. Now, when you're painting, okay, so usually what I do is I start up off the surface, of course, okay, like this. And then as you sweep down, you hit the surface in the middle of your stroke and lift. So that way, you can't tell where your stroke started and where it stopped, okay? Whereas if you start on the surface with your brush, okay, then you get this brush mark, okay? So you can see it's quite heavy right there where I started, like this, okay? So usually what I do, again, I start up off the surface, rest your hand on your pinky so you have lots of control, okay? And you're gonna sweep back and forth like this, okay? And that just gives you a nice soft dry brush, okay? And you can see my paint, so I usually have a little bit more paint on my brush than I would with a regular dry brush, okay? Same thing right on here, okay? So there's the back of this little frame over the wheel. So I'm actually gonna leave that and I'm gonna highlight the front piece, okay? So just back and forth, nice and light. Okay, like this. So I'm starting right along the edge of that piece just to really bring it out, okay? So, and don't worry, things go through these ugly stages. I promise it'll get better and better, okay? I usually do these highlights a couple times just to make them really nice and bright. Okay, so we're starting with the darkest color, which is just that mermaid tail, a touch of white, blend. Okay, and again, that just gets rid of your excess paint and evenly distributes. the paint on your brush, okay? And you can turn your piece however you find that it's most comfortable to do this, okay? But you can see I'm sort of pressing on the brush a little harder right beside that edge there, and then really lightly sort of blending away, not blending, but brushing away. Okay, so I'm really bringing out that nice edge, and it's really going to pop out from the back. So you can see I left that darker edge right here, okay, where I base coated, and we're just highlighting the front. So it's really going to make it look like it's curved. Okay, like so. Okay, so this is mermaid tail with a little bit of white. Like so. And then you're going to add just a little dash right here on that little piece beside the basket. Okay, and then also on these two little bars when you have a chance. Okay, so, and let me know if I'm going a little bit too fast. What I'll do is I'll do the pieces and then I'll come back and I'll go over everything again. Okay, but if you need a little bit more time, just please let me know. Okay, so just right in here, I'm just highlighting along the top of this bar. So whenever you start, you always start with the brightest area, okay, which would kind of be the top there. And then as you work away from that, you're going to lose the color off your brush, so it's a little bit easier just to soften away. Okay, right in here, we've got this guy, like so. Okay, so I just started with that little bar right here. Again, just highlighting that front piece right there. Okay, I did brush this way, so sort of horizontally with a little bit of a curve for this little piece. Okay, and then I highlighted along the edge right here. Okay, and again, if you get a little blotch, don't worry, we're gonna soften that out with the next color. But if you find that maybe your paint is covering a little bit too much, you might have a little bit too much water. Okay, so just tap off the excess. Now, if you find that your brush is getting a little bit gummy or the paint is, just rinse it out and then start again. Okay, so just tapping off. So this is mermaid tail, just a little touch of white. Okay, so just did those two little bars right here, and then this one is there, and then we're also going to do that, the handlebars. Okay, so on the handlebars, the brightest highlight is just right in here, and then we've got a highlight right in that center section. Okay, and then all along here is nice and bright. Okay, so we're gonna go like so, like this, and again with the pendulum stroke, I'm just brushing back and forth. And the first color that we're doing, this first color that we've mixed, covers the most area. Okay, so each color after this is a little easier because it doesn't cover quite as much. Okay, and then I'm also going to add just a little dash right in this little section here. Okay, so coming around. Okay, each time I pick up paint, I always blend off the excess like this. Okay, and then I'm going to use my chisel of my brush, and I'm doing a little vertical stroke that's a little bit rounded. Okay, so it's got a bit of a roundness to it, just following the shape of that little piece. Okay, and then of course we have the other side there. So right along that bar. Okay, so mermaid, bit of white. Okay, and again, you can see I got a little heavier paint there, but no problem. We just go over top of it and blend around it. So add more strokes around and it just disappears. Okay, so if you ever get those, don't worry. They're pretty easy to fix. Okay, you just have to kind of add more color around it to soften. Okay, so you can see I've added all those little highlights. If you hear any funny noises, that's just my dog. Okay, so we've highlighted right in here. Okay, don't forget this back piece right there. We've got that little piece right in here beside the basket. I did a little horizontal kind of rounded stroke right here. Okay, and then this piece right over here, right beside. Okay, and then we've got these two pieces, and then of course we have the handlebars. Okay, so all right. So the next step is actually just taking, doing the same thing, but I'm using more white. Okay. So, and again, if you need a few more minutes, no problem at all. How's everybody doing with that first layer? Doing okay? Okay. So I'm just adding a little bit more white and doing the same section. So you can see my color has changed just a little bit, just adding more white. Okay. Again, same areas, and this might not cover quite as much. Like this. Okay, so I can still see a little bit of that first color. Okay, and I find that it's always it's a little easier with the next layer because we already have that base on there. Okay, so I'm really pressing right beside that edge and then a little softer with my pressure as I move away from that. Okay, so you can see how it's getting a bit brighter. Okay, so just added a little bit more white to that color. Like so. Okay, and then maybe just a little bit on these pieces, not too much. I didn't start right at the top. I came down just a little bit. Okay. And then we've got the handlebars again, just adding a little highlight there. Like so. Okay, right on here. Okay, and then highlighting the other side of this handlebar we've got. Okay, so again, I'm just using that lunar blender. You can use the 1/4 inch or even the 3/8 will work great. Okay, and just kind of sliding around like this, just going back and forth, brushing that highlight in. I call this my whimsical look. You know, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. It's very loose and airy. Okay, like this. So it just keeps getting brighter and brighter with each layer that you do, okay? So we don't actually do really any shading. It's mostly just highlighting, okay? So hopefully it's really starting to pop out for you. Okay, we might do just a touch of shading just inside that little piece, but that's it. Okay, so everyone doing okay? Great. Okay, and then you can really see like on my bike, so we've just kind of, you know, it's going to get a bit brighter yet. So we're actually going to do it one more time with mostly just white. So that area really pops out. So you can see those really nice bright shines. I always go overboard when it comes to, you know, highlighting and shading. I love depth and, you know, that contrast. So I always, you know, really bring out the colors. I love just those sharp accents. Okay, we're also going to warm it up with a little bit of yellow. So yellow is such a nice warm color, and we'll add some of that after as well. So, and I really like this saying, the life is a beautiful ride. If you want to change it, definitely, you know, do whatever you like. So don't feel like you have to stay the same as me. All right, well, we're actually going to do a little bit of shading right underneath here. So maybe we'll do that now all together, and then we'll come back and we'll put on that sharpest highlight after. So just in case, okay? So I'll let everybody finish up this one little step, and then we'll do a little bit of shading just to accent here and there, and then we'll put on that nice sharp highlight to finish off. How does that sound? Okay, so just highlighting that last little section, and then you can add a little touch of black to your palette. Okay. So not too much. And then we'll do that little tiny bit of shading. Okay, so not too much. Okay, so if you found that, I'm just going to use my little, this is a 3/8 inch angle brush. Now, if there's another brush that you love to shade with, definitely go ahead. Lots of times I use my little 1/2 inch angle, or if you like to shade with a flat brush or a round, whatever you like, okay, it all goes. So if you need to put in just a little bit of shading, you can take mermaid tail and dip it into a little touch of black. Okay, so just on the toe of my brush, I'm adding a little bit of shading. Okay, and just right in this little back part right here. Okay, and this will just look fabulous and add even a little bit more depth. Okay, so you can see I just shaded right in here. I don't know if you love using the mop brush as much as me, but it just softens away any little brush marks. Love it. Okay, like this. Okay, and then my toe is pointing upwards, and I'm just shading slightly underneath that fender right here. Okay, so you can come all the way back. We aren't going to do too much shading, just a little bit right here. Okay, and again, if you want to go a little extra step and add a little bit more shading, just even underneath that little basket or that big basket of flowers. Love it. Okay. I bought my mom a nice planter yesterday for Mother's Day. She always does so much. She helps me with all the orders and running the kids around. This is on the back part of that piece, okay? And if you want to do a little extra, you can do a little bit at the bottom here on the handlebar. Okay. Don't go too much with the shading. I really didn't do much. I just did that one little part, okay? So that was just with mermaid tail, a little bit of black, okay? Again, if you want to do a little extra, you sure can. Okay, and then we're gonna go back and add one more little highlight, and that's mostly just with white, okay? So this is really gonna make it pop, okay? Again, I rinsed out my brush, tap off the excess water on both sides of your brush, okay? Taking a little bit of that white blend back and forth. And we're gonna add that nice, really sharp highlight, okay? So I'm lifting, hitting the surface in the center of the stroke, and just pull away and give that nice little wispy sort of stroke. Okay, don't think too much, just really sort of dash it on like that. Okay, same thing on this front part, it's really gonna make that pop. Okay, so that's why we don't really need too much shading. Just a little bit is lots. Okay, because that white just, wow, brings it right out. Okay, we've got on the handlebars, I'm just using white. Okay, this is just with that 1/4 inch lunar blender. I'm dashing on a little extra white right in the brightest area. Okay, like so, right at the top here, kind of in the center there, like this. Okay, so makes it pop right out. And then I really didn't add too much here. I wanted it to stay a little bit darker, so the white was just more on this front piece here. Okay, like that. Okay. All these little memes for Mother's Day keep popping up on my phone. I thought they were funny. The two things I love more than anything in the world, number one, being with my kids. Number two, not being with my kids. All right, so we're gonna leave that for a few minutes, okay? And we're gonna work on the tire. So now that we have that black and the white out, okay, we're going to just loosely base the tire, okay? So you can see here, I've got, I started with that darker gray. So I'm just gonna mix black with a little touch of white. And we're gonna base in that tire right here. And also the edge right in there. And then we're gonna add more highlights and just build it up, okay? So here we go. Okay. So there's a little bit of that frame right here. Good catch. Okay, there's always something I miss. All right, so if you want to throw that in, if you missed it too, just go ahead and do that. Okay, and then I'll add another little highlight to that after. Okay, so for that bike tire, I'm just going to use black and a little touch of white. So we're going to make sort of a darker gray color. Okay, again, I'm just using that a 1/4 inch, or you can use your 3/8 inch lunar blender like this. Okay, I find it easier just to mix the black and the white than, you know, to get a whole bunch of different grays. Okay, and we're going to basically loosely base in that tire. So you can leave a little bit, don't go over the graphite lines. Okay, but you're gonna brush in a little bit of color, like so. Okay, so black, a little bit of white, makes a dark gray, and you're going to very loosely brush in that tire, okay? So I'm pressing on my brush a little heavier. I'm using more paint than I would that typical dry brush, okay? This is more of a loose base coat, I guess, okay? So there's my little tire. That's just with the black and a little bit of white. Okay, so this is just the tire. You can also do this inside piece right in here. Okay. So this one, I skipped the middle section and I'm just doing this little one right here. Okay, so right on the tire there. Oops, like so. Okay, and I'm using, I'm just using the chisel of my brush. If you want to switch and use your little 1/8 inch lunar blender, you definitely can. Okay, and you can see my lines are a little bit not perfect, but it always comes together in the end. Okay, once you get everything done, again, there's those kind of ugly stages, but it's just going to get better and better. Like so. Okay, so I just used the chisel of my brush, did this little section right here. Okay, like that. I'm going to grab my little 1/8 inch lunar blender. This one is pretty handy for those little small sections. So again, wet your brush a little bit first, tap off the excess. Okay, and I'm going to use that same color, so black and a little bit of white. Okay, and I'm going to add a little color right on this little metal part of the handlebar here. Okay, so this is just with that darker gray. So black and a little bit of white. Okay, so all of these little metal sections we're gonna do. Okay, so you can see how I left the graphite line showing. Again, I always try and use that background color to my advantage, so that black to create the depth and a little bit of separation, a little bit of white. Using my little lunar blender, that little 1/8 inch. Okay, again, just dashing in. I'm using even the chisel of my brush for this little section right here. And then a little bit bigger, so I'm using the flat part of the brush to add that highlight right in here. Okay. So there's the first step to those little pieces right there. Okay. Like so. Okay, so just adding that little bit of color on the wheel there. I'm going to even bring it on the edge of the canvas. I always like it when it sort of continues. When you hang it on the wall and it's finished on the sides, I really like that. Okay, so we started out with the bike frame. That was just with the mermaid tail, adding white. Okay, so we just built up the highlights. So we used mermaid tail, touch of white, then added some more. And then finally, just that bright white highlight, okay, on those couple sections there. And then we base coated that, or loosely based the tire, okay, and the inside part of that little frame with just a really dark gray. So it was black and a little bit of white, okay. And now we're gonna highlight, okay. So just adding more white to your brush, okay. So you can see how much it's it's getting a little bit brighter. I added some more white, and this time we're going to highlight the center of that tire. Okay, and again, if I'm going a little bit too fast, please let me know. I need a few more minutes. Okay, but basically I'm starting to highlight that center area, and you can see it looks a little bit blotchy, but the more strokes that you add, the softer it looks. Okay, and we're going to add, actually at the end of the class, we're going to add some chalk pencil little lines. I call them little accent lines, and that always adds a final little touch. You can see I've kind of outlined, I've got a little bit of chalk pencil here and there, kind of scribble it in here and there. It's quite fun. So, okay, so this is another gray, a little lighter. Okay, and I'm just adding that highlight on that bike tire. Okay, and this is going to get a little brighter. We're going to do it one more time with a little bit brighter gray once we get this in. Okay, so black and some white. Okay, you can see I've brightened up quite a bit. Like this. Okay, and with this same color, I'm going to loosely base the center section right here. Okay, so I'm using the chisel of my brush, and I'm adding this color right in the center there. All right, okay, so just basing that center, I'm using the chisel of my brush. You can use the little 1/8 inch if you want. Okay, for that middle part, so it's a little bit brighter. And you're just kind of basing that in, really. Just loosely basing it in. Okay, so that's with white, a little bit of black, so kind of a medium gray. Like this. I'm going to try and even this out. And if you kind of lose that black line in between the sections, you can always take your liner brush or something and put it back in. But you need to really dry brush over top of it again, just to kind of soften. Otherwise, it looks pretty harsh. Okay, if you do paint that separation line. Okay. Like this. Okay. All right. Okay, so just base that in with that sort of medium to light gray. Okay, so that was black and a little bit of white, and I'm just using my lunar blender. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight on this section that's right close to the spokes on the tire. Okay, so I'm just using the chisel of the brush, or you can use your little 1/8 inch lunar blender. Like so. Okay. We're also going to do just a little bit of shading on the tire, not too much. Okay. But just to kind of give it a little bit more depth. Okay, same thing with those little pieces right on the handles. Okay, just gonna dash a little bit of color on there. like this. So little vertical strokes. Okay, and they don't have to be exactly perfect. Okay. So this is with that sort of medium gray color. Okay, I'm using my little 1/8 inch lunar blender for this. Okay, and you want it to look kind of like a little reflection like that. So I left just a little kind of space in there, but we'll get brighter and brighter. So don't worry, this one mostly covers the whole area, and then the next color, it'll really pop. So all right. Okay, so there was a couple of late joiners. Welcome to the class. Thank you for coming. We just did a little bit of dry brushing using the lunar blender to highlight the bike frame. Okay, so that was with mermaid tail and white. And then we added a little bit more white just to get a little bit brighter, and then mostly just white for that final highlight. Okay, and then we are dry brushing the tire, okay, and the frame on the wheel. Okay, and that was just with black and just a mix of black and a little bit of white for the first layer, and then added more white. Okay, I gotta rinse my brush out. They tend to get a little bit gummy. Try not to leave your brushes in the water. Of course, these ones have a wooden handle, so sometimes what happens is the wood swells a little bit and the paint cracks off them, so they just don't look that pretty anymore. Okay. All right. Okay, so I've got that highlight on the wheel. Okay, we're going to add another highlight. So this one is going to be mostly just white and a little tiny touch of black. Okay, so it's a really nice light gray, whoops, like that. So white and just a little bit of black. There we go. Nice and light. Okay, and we're going to highlight the center section right in here. Okay, so I'm using the chisel of my brush to put that in, or you can use your little 1/8 inch. Like so. So mostly white, just the tiniest little bit of black. Okay. And then a little bit on this center one, not too much, for the one that's right in the middle. Okay, and then a nice little highlight right in the middle of that tire. Okay, so you're getting really nice and bright. Like so. Okay, so I'm just adding that nice shine on the wheel right in here. Okay, you can continue it a little bit at the back. Okay. Like so, and I want this to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to do just a little bit of shading in a few minutes, okay, to darken that. So don't worry if it's a little bit bright like mine. Okay, we're going to add just a little bit of shading. Okay. All right. How's everybody doing? I'm using my little 1/8 inch lunar blender here. Okay. And I'm using that same color. So black and actually white and a little tiny touch of black. Okay, so it's a very light gray. And I'm going to add this highlight again on those little metal pieces right there on the handle. Okay, so this time I'm using the chisel of my little 1/8 inch lunar blender, and I'm doing little dashes like this. So it almost, it looks like a really nice harsh shine like that. So Okay, so right in here, like this. Okay, so just adding that little highlight, just dashing it in. Okay, same thing on the other side. Okay, we've got a couple little dashes. So it's not just one continuous one right here. It's actually, I'm doing a couple little sections there. So there's a little highlight along the top and then in the center there. Okay. Okay, couple little things, kind of reflected, little reflection right in there. Okay, like that. So they don't have to be one continuous stroke. You can actually just sort of dash them in like this. Okay. All right. Okay, so I did those two little sections right here on the bike. And then we're going to come back with just white and we're going to do one more final little highlight. Okay, so when everybody's ready. So again, I started out with a really dark gray to base coat that tire and then the inside section. Okay, then we added a little bit more white and we did the highlights on the wheel and we based the center section. Okay, added a highlight in the middle. I know it's kind of confusing, all this stuff on the tire, but, and then we're gonna add one more final highlight, okay, here in just a few minutes. And that's just gonna be with just white, okay. And then we'll do the spokes. All right, okay, so we've got those couple little areas come into life. Okay, so I just did that last little highlight. That was just with the white with a tiny little touch of black. Okay. Don't forget to do these little handles. Okay, these pieces on the handle. Right there. Okay, and if your brushes are getting a little bit gummy, just rinse those out. Okay, but you can see there's those nice little shines on that metal section. Okay, and then we're going to do a little bit of shading just on that tire right in here. Okay, so okay, so when you have a chance, I'm just going to take my angle shader. I'm going to make my tire just a tiny little bit darker. This is, if your tire is good, you can leave it. But I'm just going to take a little bit of black with my angle, and I'm going to add just a tiny little bit of shading. So my toes pointing down on my brush. Okay, this is with black, and it's just going to add that nice sharp little line there. Okay. Now, if yours already looks fabulous, then just leave it. It's all good. Okay. Just adding that little bit of shadow. Okay, just behind. Okay, and you can use your mop brush to soften. Like so. Okay, so there was just that little bit of black that I added. Okay. Nothing too fancy. Just to kind of add that little extra shading. Okay, right there. So this was my toe was pointing down, and I just shaded the bottom of that actual rubber tire. Okay. Like so. All right. Okay. So we're going to add those little spokes right here. Okay, I'm just using my round brush. Find it's the easiest. Or you can use, if you want, you can also use like the chisel of your little 1/8" lunar blender to paint those in. Okay, those are just with sort of like a medium gray. So just take black and some white like this. Okay, so maybe just a little bit more white than black. Okay, and you're gonna paint those little, they're like just a little dash. Like I really didn't do anything fancy. Okay, and you're gonna paint that little line. It sometimes even skips a little bit. Okay, like so. Okay, so you can paint those little spokes in like this. Okay, so black and white mixed together, add a little bit more white. Like so. Okay, so a couple little dashes for the top part there. Okay, and then just pulling a little line in. Like that. Okay, so a little dash at the top and then pull in towards the center. Okay, and this one right here that goes over top of the bike frame, I just added a little extra black, okay, just kind of beside to make it pop out a little bit. So this one just has a little touch of black right here. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Okay, so those were just with the medium gray. I mixed black and white, just adding a little bit more white. Okay. And then the highlight on these actually, if you want to add a little touch of white, you can, but I actually just use my chalk pencil. So you can do that later. Okay. So just painting those little spokes in. Those were with that medium gray. So black and white, just add more white. And then our final highlight for all these sections is just white. Okay, so I took a little bit of white and just did that kind of final little dash on the tire if you haven't done so already. Okay, just, you can give it a little bit more highlight right in the front there and just kind of trail back. So nothing too fancy. Okay, right in here. And then if you see on the original, I actually took a chalk pencil and I scribbled white. Okay, so if it looks a little bit brighter on here, actually I did that with the chalk. So don't worry too much. Okay, So right in here. I'm going to brighten this up one more time, just because I want it to be a little bit brighter. All right, okay, and then another little bit of white. So I just did that front part of the tire. You can do the middle section with white, just adding a little highlight. Right in here. Okay, so you can see I added a bit of white there. Like so. Okay, if you want to add just a little tiny dash on that very inside frame, you can just right near the front. Okay, and then you can use even your round brush. Okay, so use your round brush and just add some really nice shines, like little dashes, okay, right in here. So right along that little metal piece, you can add, I call them little dashes, nothing too fancy, just using your round brush to add that final little kind of reflected light there. Okay, so is it showing up at all? Ugh, the light kind of, I think it's better farther away here, but I just added kind of little strong dashes of white on these, just using my round brush. Okay. So just kind of dashing it in. Like so. You can even use your round just to add a final little strong dash of highlight right in here as well. Okay, so I'm just using, I have a 4 round here, if you have a 5 or a 3, whatever you've got. Okay, and I just added some little extra strong dashes with my round brush. Okay, so longer one right here, and then right in the center there. Okay. All right, starting to come to life. Okay. And the spokes, I actually really didn't highlight those. If you want to, you can just add like maybe a light gray, but I used my chalk pencil at the end and I just added a little chalk line on each one. So it really sort of brightened it up. Okay. And then we're going to do those handles in a few minutes. Okay. So this was the most confusing part, I guess, of the whole picture, just to kind of get that tire and the different sections in there. Okay, but we got her done. That the darkest gray was the tire. Okay, and that middle or this most inside section right in here, and then we did those little metal parts beside the handle. Okay, and then basically we just kept building up the colors just by adding more white. Okay, so each dry brush covered a little bit smaller area, okay, until we finally got to that white. So the white's right in the center there, just pulling a little bit. And then we'll add some nice little accents with our chalk pencil at the end, okay? So. All right. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes just to kind of finish that up. Again, I just sort of finished off with that, my round brush, using just white to add those final little shines. Okay. Okay. Okay, so just rinse out your brush when you're all finished. Okay, and we'll give that, we'll work on those little handles when everybody's ready. Okay, so whenever you're ready, just give me a thumbs up. If you need a few more minutes, just let me know. Doing okay? Everybody's okay, awesome. Great, thank you. Perfect. Colleen, you're doing okay? Good, okay. So for those handles, I actually did them. I thought it would be nice with the antique maroon. So this is antique maroon is just kind of a reddy brown color. And I used that. Okay, and I added a little bit of, well, I can't remember if is burnt sienna on the list? Did I put them on the list or not? And then we'll also use some white, okay? So these three colors, we've got antique maroon, we've got burnt sienna, and some white, okay? All right, and we're gonna do those little handles. And feel free to change the color. So if you want something a little different, definitely go ahead. Now, with these handles, I really use the background color again. So I left the black showing. So there's those little ridges, okay, in between. So those I left showing. So you don't have to cover the whole handle. Again, the same on the other side. And then basically I highlighted. So the first color was antique maroon, the base, and then I highlighted with burnt sienna, and then I added some white. So that's how we're gonna layer it, okay? So again, the darkness comes first, and I'm just using my little 1/8" lunar blender. It's gonna be good, okay? So I'll try and zoom in here a little bit so that you can see a little bit better. Hopefully that's okay. Okay, and then I'm just gonna take that, I wet my brush first, tap off the excess water. Again, that just softens up the hairs on the brush a little bit. Okay, and you're gonna use that antique maroon, blend back and forth. Okay, and we're gonna start right at the top there and then just allow it to skip a little bit. Okay, so again, here's my whimsical nature coming in. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think people stress about that too much. This one, see how I'm just pulling down and letting the color skip. Okay, so you wanna do that. And then leave a little space where that graphite line is sort of showing, and then start the next section. And then that way you have that little bit of darkness in between those little ridges. Okay, so right in here. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just pulling down, let it skip. Okay, and this is all with antique maroon. Really nice color. I don't use it a whole bunch, but it worked really nice here. Okay, so like this. All right, so you can see I just sort of press on your brush. This is not one of those pendulum strokes. You want to start on the surface and pull down and lift. Okay, so that's a little stronger at the top and then fades away at the bottom. Okay, like that. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so again, press your brush down right at the top there and then lift as you pull down so that you get sort of like that kind of broken edge at the bottom. Fades away a little bit. Okay, it's not perfect. Like this. I love the loose, whimsical dashes. I really, just a quick little dash is all you need. Okay. right, so there's the antique maroon, really quick way to base coat. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry, and then we're going to add the highlight. Okay, so all right, so I just blow dried that just so that it was really nice and dry. Okay, and then the next step is I'm just gonna pull into some of this burnt sienna here. Okay, blend back and forth to get rid of the excess. And we're gonna add, same thing, just adding a little highlight. So I'm not starting right at the very top. Okay, it's down just a touch like this. Okay, and allowing it to skip as I pull down. Okay. Like that. Okay, don't leave too much of the black showing in between. It's just a very skinny little line. Okay, so, and you can even connect it a little bit more at the bottom if you want. Okay, so just adding that burnt sienna again, from pulling from the top, almost the top, and then down. Like so. Okay, so there's that. Okay, and again, I use my little chalk pencil at the end just to kind of add that nice little edge. Okay. All right, so I base coated them with the antique maroon. Make sure you blow dry or make sure it's nice and dry, and then you're going to use burnt sienna. Okay. Right in here, we're going to add that really nice little shine right there. Okay, so this is, we're going to use burnt sienna and white. Okay, so that's the next step, just with burnt sienna and white. So I'm going to mix those two together. I know it's going to make kind of an odd, well, kind of like a raw sienna almost. And then just the white. Okay, so here's that little really dash like this. Okay, it's a little bit more strong. Okay, like this across. Okay, so this is going to look a little bit strange, this color, but we're going to put white on top and it's going to change it quite a bit. We just need that sort of stepping stone here to get to the white. Okay, so that's with burnt sienna and white. Like this. Okay, so it's not right at the top, it's like down just a little bit so that we're creating that illusion of roundness. So in here, a little stronger, they're more like little dashes of color. Okay, this one gets a little smaller to create a little bit of perspective. Okay, so it starts off a little bit bigger and then it gets a little bit smaller with those dashes as it fades away. Okay, you can even do a couple little dashes below here. Okay. And I usually just dry brush or kind of brush mix on my palette instead of mixing a color like to use all the time, because you get a little bit more variation. So every time I go to my palette, I mix up a little bit more, might be a little bit different, but I really do like that variation. So sometimes it's a little lighter and sometimes it's a little darker, but okay. All right, so there's those little dashes. Again, it looks a little strange with that, bright graphite line around it, but it'll work in the end. Okay. All right. So wipe your brush clean on your palette or your paper towel, and then just use white. Okay. So just white basically, might be a little bit tinted there. And then you're gonna add that final little highlight. And you can even use the chisel of your little 1/8" lunar blender if you like, just to give it that final little shine. Okay, and look at how it pops. Like it's just, love it. I just enjoy painting so much. It's just so much fun. Adding those little shines and shadows. I love dry brushing. Okay, right in here. It's great. The kids can hang out with their dad. Seems like when I'm around, it just, they always ask their dad or their mom. Funny. Okay, so right in here with the white. Okay, adding those final little dashes. Okay, really brings it across. Like that. Okay, so should be coming to life. Here's a good one. If I had to pick a favorite child, I guess I'd have to pick my husband. He's learning to be a little more independent than the other children. It's funny. Okay, so just adding those final little highlights with white. I was still using my little lunar blender, but you could also use your round brush. Okay. I always keep going back and just adding a couple little extra shines here and there. Okay. Like so. All right, so the basket, you can see I added lots of little strokes right in here. And I used my lunar blender. Surprise, surprise. I love that brush. Okay, so I actually used it more on the chisel like this, and I just did little dashes. Okay, and if you sort of stagger them a little bit, you get that kind of basket weave. And then basically what I did was I dry brushed highlight colors more towards the center, okay, center front. Okay, so we're gonna do that base first. Okay, so the basket is done with antique maroon, so we already have that color out, which is nice. Okay, and then we're going to add highlights. So we're going to use burnt sienna. We're going to use a little bit of raw sienna. If you have that, you can get that out as well. Okay, and then some camel. Okay, so those couple colors. Here we've got the camel, and then we also have raw sienna is what we're going to use, which I forgot to get out. So raw sienna, never exactly where you want it to be. Okay, I'll grab that in just a minute. Okay, so we're going to start with antique maroon. Again, we're going to start with that darkest color, and then we just build up the highlights on there. Okay, so we're going to use antique maroon. I'm going to blend off the excess. And what I did was I just took my the chisel of my brush. Okay, and if you're unsure what the chisel is, when I'm talking, there's the flat of the brush, which is the widest area on your brush when you hold it flat. Okay, and then if you turn it on its side, this is called the chisel, and it's where all the hairs line up to make a nice line. Okay, so basically, when I'm doing those handles like this, I'm using the chisel and I'm sliding across like this. Okay, and I'm leaving a little bit of space in between each stroke. Okay, so I kind of try and leave the graphite line showing a little bit if I can, just so that I have that darkness in between. Okay, so don't worry, it doesn't have to be exact. So if you need to add a little stroke here and there that's not there, it's totally fine. Okay, but this is how I did that. And then once you add those highlights, man, it just looks like it's kind of wrapping around, which is cool. Okay, so just kind of filling this in like this. Okay, and I'm using the chisel of my brush, or you can even use the 1/8 inch if you prefer. Okay, so right in here. Like this. So I start on the chisel and then push on my brush so it's a little bit wider in the center, and then lift up and you get that little skinnier end. Okay, so this is all with that antique maroon. And then we've got these pretty flowers coming in here. All right. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue this. We're going to add all those little strokes on the basket. Okay, so right around here, I'm going to start right here. Okay, so like this. So I'm using the chisel of my brush and just pulling across like that, and just doing lots of one stroke here. Okay. Then I'm going to work up and just add a few more little dashes beside the leaf. Okay, then you're going to do, so you can see I started that first row. Baskets are perfect, so they don't have to be exact, those strokes. Okay, like that. And then you're going to do the next row, which is going to thread into that. So it's going to have a little bit, you're going to stagger those dashes a little bit more. Okay, so right in here, just coming up. Figured this would be the easiest way to do a basket. So once we get the base in there, this is the hardest part. And then once we have that in there, we're going to just add little dashes of highlight. Okay, so like this. Okay, so I've got my next row. Everybody doing okay? Okay, again, you're going to stagger it, but it's really nice and close together. And then I just fade away at the top. Okay, you can't really see the top of the basket. Again, with another layer. And you just keep going until you filled the whole thing in. So, except for the bottom, this is again those little sort of S strokes. So it looks like it's weaving in there. Okay, there's our basket coming to life slowly. Okay. Again, you're just filling in all those rows. They just sort of thread into each other. Okay. And then just fade away here. Okay, and I'm just going to pull this right on the edge of the canvas because I do like when, again, you just finish it off a little bit. Okay. like so. All right, so there's our start. It'll obviously look a little bit better once we get those leaves in there as well. Okay. So this is all with antique maroon. I'm just doing that with my little I'm using my 1/4" lunar blender. You can use your 1/8" if you like. I'm using the chisel just so that my strokes aren't quite as wide. And then I'm also going to do this bottom right here. So you're just going to dash down like this. Okay, so start at the top, press on your brush and lift and pull it at diagonal there. Okay, so then it looks like you've got that nice little curve there to your strokes. Okay, they're all threading into one another. Okay, so these ones I had my chisel kind of at a diagonal and just press on your brush and pull down and towards the back of the right side of the picture there. Okay, so like so. Okay. Okay, so just filling that in with the antique maroon. We've got that antique maroon base in, and now we're just going to add little highlights. Okay, and again, like I was showing on the other picture, I kept the first color that we do, the burnt sienna, will cover almost the whole basket. Okay, and then we'll start getting a little bit brighter, and the focus of that highlight is definitely on the handle right in here. So we've got a nice little highlight there. And then just this sort of kind of oval shape right here, we're going to add lots of highlight. Okay, so here we go. Burnt sienna. So hopefully everybody has that. Okay, just using that burnt sienna, same way that I did the base coating, we just kind of using the chisel of the brush. And we're going to add a little dash of a highlight on those strokes. Okay, I know this takes a little bit of time, but it does have that payoff in the end, looks so pretty. Okay, but it's the quickest little dash that you're going to do. Okay, so once you get your color on your brush, you're just going to dash those strokes with a little bit of burnt sienna. Okay, I can still see that antique maroon, so it's not so much color that, you know, it's covering all of that. So just sort of hitting the center of those little leaves. Okay, not so much underneath, you know, the leaves, you're gonna just do a little bit. So color sort of fading off my brush as I get up a little bit higher beside those leaves. Okay. Right in here, you're gonna do the same little dash. Again, right in the center. So there's a little bit of antique maroon still showing. You can still see it. Okay. So that's just with the burnt sienna, and it goes pretty quick. Like once you have your brush loaded, you just do a little dash on each one. And therefore, then you have that shadow sort of on either side with the antique maroon. Okay, so you're hitting that center. And then you're also going to do highlight, just kind of putting that little dash on that basket handle. Okay, so right in the center of these strokes. like so with that burnt sienna, and then we're gonna get a little brighter using raw sienna and then some camel. Okay, so you can see it's already coming to life, really nice and bright. So the base was antique maroon. I added some of that. Now we're just starting to highlight with burnt sienna, and I just hit the center of each little stroke. Okay, and I did the whole basket. Like so. Don't think too much, just very whimsical dashes like this. Okay. But look at look at how it just pops right out. Doesn't it look like it's already starting to weave? We've got that nice darkness in between each one. Okay. Okay, and then you're going to use raw sienna. Okay. Okay. Found my color here. Just using that raw sienna like this. Okay. So with the antique maroon, well, that was the base. Burnt sienna, I did all of the strokes. Okay, didn't cover quite as much, so I can still see a little bit of antique maroon on either side because I hit it in the center. And then now I'm going to be adding raw sienna. This is really going to start to show up. Okay, so I'm maybe not going to do a lot on this side, maybe just a little bit. And then camel is that final highlight where it really makes it pop. Okay. Okay, so just doing that raw sienna. Okay, so I'm starting out really nice and light, just a little bit on those. Okay, and then I'm going to press on my brush a little bit harder for that second row. So I'm going to get a little bit brighter. Okay, you can see it's coming to life a little more with each color. Okay, and I'm just kind of fading away as I get towards those leaves. Okay, so it's a little bit more shadowed underneath. Okay. Like this. Okay. Maybe not quite so much coming in here. We want it to stay a little bit darker at the top there. Okay, with that raw sienna. Okay, and then I'm going to dash a little bit of color on this little weave right at the bottom. Okay. And then of course our handle on our basket is going to be nice and bright. Seem to have an extra little dash in there. Okay, so right in here, just hitting all of those little tops and pulling. like so. Okay, so that was with raw sienna. We're just gradually building up. I'm actually going to go back and hit a couple more of these just one more time for that extra little bright highlight. Okay, so second layer of raw sienna, just on these, you know, couple little, this little section right here, I'm just going to add a little dash more of raw sienna just to make it a little bit brighter. Okay, so just, I added a little bit more of the raw sienna right in here. Okay. And then it's raw sienna actually, and then a little bit of camel. Okay, so we're gonna mix those two together just because camel is so bright. So I just took a little bit of that raw sienna, dipped in the camel. We'll mix those two together just by blending them like this. Okay, and then you can do that next little, okay, and this is more of a dry brush. So you really want to blend off the excess. Okay, make sure that there's no water in your brush, and we'll just sort of dash on a little highlight. Okay, so you can see how much that just pops. So this is the camel and raw sienna. And then a few more little dashes maybe towards the, like right in here. Okay. Like so. Okay, so this is raw sienna and camel. Each color covers a little bit smaller area. Okay, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of hitting that center of that little weave. Okay, so raw sienna and camel. And just very loose, don't think too much. Okay, just doing that little dash on each one brings it to life. Okay, so each color that we do covers a smaller area, but really adds to it, I think. Okay, you can add the odd little dash over here just to kind of pull it like that. Okay, and then of course we've got this handle. Just kind of hitting the center there. Okay, handle's popping right out. Okay, so right in here. Like so. Okay, and then we're going to add just a tiny little bit of camel. So that's the last, well, not quite the last step. I'm lying. Okay, but put a little dash of camel sort of here and there. Just on these kind of front sections here. All right. Okay, so you can, I just did the tiniest little bit of camel by itself, just a few little dashes right in here. Okay, and then some on the handle. Okay, so we did antique maroon was the base. We highlighted with burnt sienna. Okay, so the burnt sienna covered the whole basket. But you could still see the antique maroon. And then we used raw sienna. Okay, so the raw sienna sort of trailed off in underneath the leaves where the shadow areas were. Didn't do quite as much. And then we did raw sienna, okay? And then raw sienna and camel really popped, so we kept it more towards this front section and on the handle, and then just camel. So little dashes right in here and on the handle. And there's one little thing that I did to warm it up. So okay, so I took just a little bit of cad yellow and I mixed a little bit of camel in there. And I added the odd little sunny dash in here. Okay, so just a teeny tiny little bit of cad yellow that's not showing up. Hang on one second. Oh, there we go. Okay, so mostly just cad yellow. If you like that little bit of a glow, I know it's really hard to tell, but you know, you can see it. And I just added a teeny tiny little bit of cad yellow to warm it up. Looks really pretty. Looks like the sun is hitting it just slightly. Okay, so right in here. And then also on that basket handle, you could use cad yellow and even a touch of white. Looks really pretty. It looks like the sun is just kind of hitting the handle and adding a little bit of a glow to it. Okay, I even added some on the handlebar. Ooh, be careful, it turned green. So you want to keep it right on that white highlight. Okay, so this is cad yellow. You can even add cad yellow with a little touch of white. Just for that final little dash, looks so nice. And then I will stop and we'll have a little bit of a break. Okay, like so. Right in here. Okay, so there's our basket. Okay. Okay, so the basket, antique maroon, we did burnt sienna, lots of colors. Raw sienna, then raw sienna and camel. And then I used cad yellow, and for the handle, I used cad yellow and white. So I mixed those, gives you sort of a softer yellow. And it just looks like the sun is just hitting that handle right there, giving it a nice little glow. So you could just play with this forever. Sometimes that's you gotta just stop. So